Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decided to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And today we continue our quest to do the faction focus for every faction in 10th edition, at least when the index is released. I don't know, maybe they release a crazy book later on and we missed it. But for now, we're gonna try to be fully up to date. And that means at some point we have to talk about one of the most secretive factions in the Imperium. Period. I mean, a faction that in canon very few people know about, and yet John and I got information on them. Curious.
Yeah. Turns out Kentucky still exists in the 41st millennium, and it hasn't changed much.
Everyone forgets we're here, so we see things.
Yeah.
I love that for us. Love that.
Full of Elder Tours.
Just hollers full of Elder Tours. I really had to pronunciate that one. Both would work. Today we're going to talk about the Grey Knights. Because, I mean, truly, if we're going to talk about Elder Tours, you have to talk about the Grey Knights. They're someone who we didn't lump in with the Space Marines because they are, while they are technically Space Marines, they are a little different. And I think it's worth talking about that like right off the rip, so you understand why these crazy rules are happening here in just a few minutes when we get to them. So the flavor of the Grey Knights, right? They are Space Marines. They are taken at young boys when they are just about the age of puberty, and they are given extra organs and implants and modifications to turn them into huge, unkillable super soldiers.
Hulking monstrosities.
Yeah, the big armored hulking monstrosities. But they go through their own special, fresh, individualistic kind of hell. For a Grey Knight, being a young boy who is prone to violence or strength or coordination or intelligence isn't enough. You have to be dauntless. I mean, absolutely dauntless. And make it through a set of trials on the moon that would just destroy not just most children, but almost all living human beings. And make a almost pilgrimage across the moon to make it to their secret base. And if you make it there without falling to your death or freezing or having atmospheric complications or starving or dehydrating or losing your mind or just spontaneously having a pulmonary embolism from the budding psychic abilities, you could become a Grey Knight. And once you do that, it's why they are so strict and why they're so regimented kinds to come to the fore. Because, I mean, like, John, you would agree, Space Marines fight horrible stuff. All of them.
Yeah, so, like, Space Marines fight basically everything.
Yeah.
But they don't have a very specific job like the Grey Knights do.
Yes. Because the Grey Knights are not like most Space Marines where they might have a general call to fight the enemies of the Imperium, right? They could show up and fight anything. The Grey Knights, to the man, are all psychers. And they're all powerful psychers. Every one of them is a space wizard in heavily powered armor.
Yeah.
And that's because every single one of them is meant to fight one enemy, and one enemy only, and that's demons. Chaos, in the rawest form.
Yeah, they're space paladins.
They are. I mean, the shining swords, the, blazing white flames coruscating up their weapons, the whole 9 yards. And they combined the physical strengths of a Space Marine plus the incredible empiric might of the psychic abilities together to make a devastating force that will appear from what appears to be nowhere, teleport into a battlefield in shining white light, strike down the foes of the Imperium, and then, just as quickly as they appeared and put everyone down, will disappear.
Right.
Leaving no survivors in their wake. And that bit of lore is actually what they wrote the new rules around, which are very different than the previous rules.
Yeah, so
I like
that
them.
rule. It's so good. That rule is very good, and it's teleport assault. And it's one of the rules that's kind of scaled depending on the size of your your battle.
Yeah, which is good. You can see the increments over there on the
Yeah.
edit.
But what it does, in the simplest terms, is it allows you to teleport a number of your units around the battlefield.
Ooh, and
Right.
quite a number of them at 2K.
Right. And like Grey Knights have always had the ability to teleport, but this really ramps up that flexibility to always be moving around the board in a very good way. And like there's really not a whole lot more to say to that, except that they get to teleport all over the board. Like you can read the wording right here, and that sounds simple, but there's a lot of nuance there to use.
Yeah,
it's mobility tricks.
It's one thing to say I get to redeploy 3 units every turn. It is another to figure out how to efficiently redeploy 3 units every turn to really get the bang for your buck.
Yeah, like this is a rule that will show your skill level the more you play with it.
Yes, whether you're using it to steal objectives, to try to get long bomb charges, to threaten backline objectives, to redeploy one of your own big threats, or just to like chaff block your opponent's battle, like their battle plan. There's so many uses for this redeploy, and it's pretty incredible. And it's not their only movement trick.
No, it is not. They also have another movement trick that is extremely good.
So the second one here is their detachment rule. For this subfaction, there's only one in the index. There will be more when their codex inevitably comes. But it's called Teleport Shunt. And there's some text there, but this one is much less wordy and it's much simpler. So for the Grey Knights, when you go to do an advance roll, instead of rolling a d6 and adding whatever that number is to their move, you just add a flat 6 inches, guaranteed, which is really good on its own, but also
already
they can
great.
fly while they do it, which is just delightful. So that means you can avoid terrain, and you can avoid enemy bottles, you can hop the line, and, you know, sort of like Nightcrawler, blink through the warp and out where you want to be.
And I think the most powerful thing that it provides you is the ability to have a thing in your plan that is for sure.
Yes.
Right? When you're planning your turnout, you know exactly how much each unit's going to advance if you want to advance them, and where they can go. You don't have to worry about, do I roll enough? Is it going to be good enough? No, you can be very precise with where you want to move and advance to and where you want to teleport to.
Yeah. And I think precision is the name of the game for a lot of this army book. And it also transfers over to the War Scrolls. So this is where in some videos, content creators would break down every one of the data sheets in the releases. But for us, we feel that that's just a little too long of a video. So what we like to do here on the channel is we each pick one data sheet that we think is representative of the faction or cool, and then talk about why we think it's cool or representative. John, I will start first. If we're going to talk about this faction, we have to talk about the heroes, right? Because they're really like the most powerful wizards, as I sit here and think through it.
I mean, yes, their individual dudes are also basically just heroes in small squads.
They are, but the heroes are like heroic heroes. I mean, they literally have like the meme hero of guy who is like Warhammer 40k Chuck Norris in the army.
Yeah. Hero plus. It's great.
He's not who I'm picking. But I'm going to pick the brother captain, who is, you will be shocked to find, actually one of the not big heroes in the book. There are much bigger heroes, but I still think this one is really, really good. So you can see on the screen, he's got a pretty good Space Marine profile, if I'm being honest. A lot of the Grey Knights go in Terminator armor, which in other chapters is kind of rare, but here, a lot of them have Terminator armor. It is one of their distinctive features, that they get this very high quality war gear. So he's got a toughness of 5, which is higher than your average, and he's got a save of 2+, which is also higher than your average, 6 wounds, which is higher than your average. The only thing that's a little lower is he only has 1 objective control, because he's more worried about murder. And you can see that over there on the side of his war scroll. So he gets the Empiric Amplification ability, which buffs the unit that he's in. For the unit that he is residing within, that all of their psychic weapons get sustained hits 1. That's their shooting psychic weapons. That's their melee psychic weapons. All of it gets sustained hits 1.
Basically everything that they have.
Almost. I mean, for example, on his sheet, the Psy Cannon would get it, the Silencer would get it, his melee weapon would get it. All sustained hits 1. And his unit's going to have similar stuff depending on what you put him in. And for himself, when he goes to attack with a psychic weapon, which again, he has a number of those, he gets to reroll the wound rolls. So he's hitting with sustained hits 1, which will explode your hits, and he's rerolling wounds, so he's really going to be consistent on getting damage through and buffing his own unit. And that's good on its own, but then consider that whatever unit he's in is going to be teleporting constantly to make sure that his buff gets onto a weapon that will be in range whenever you want it to be.
Yeah, you can really utilize that core army rule to set up him having a consistent amount of damage throughout the game, not just like 1 or 2 shooting phases. And it makes that unit, if you deep strike them up forward, set themselves up for like firing Overwatch and making your opponent really decide, do I even want to move around these guys? Because you can Overwatch when someone begins or ends a movement now.
And still get your sustained hits.
Yeah, it's really good.
And secondarily, he's not a slouch in melee combat either, as you can see. So let's say you put him in a more shooty-oriented unit. Cool, they're going to come melee you. Are you sure you want to do that? He's got enough of a punch that he might make people think twice. And so he really helps you to ask a question of your opponent that is hard for them to solve easily. And he could go in a number of units, which is always good. It gives you a couple of build options. And, I mean, John, if we're going to talk about units that you're going to want to put heroes in, I think we have to throw it to your pick, because it's quite good.
Yeah, I almost broke the rules of this series with this episode because I really want to pick 2 units to call this. But I can really only talk about one of them right now, so I'm going to talk about the base part of this combo, and that is a Purifier Squad.
Ooh, yeah, the big shooty squad.
But I'm telling you that if you're going to take this pick, you should look at the Castellan Crow. Just a little hint there. But Purifier Squad is a very aggressive unit. Right, they're going to use that teleport or that teleport shunt to get in really close and burn things up. But they have some options. You can replace 2 of the guys with any of these range weapons, right? Like you can take two of your guys, remove the Nemesis Force weapons and the bolt guns, and instead put on an incinerator, a silencer, a Psy Cannon, whatever you need. But an important thing to know about this edition of 40k, especially when it comes to psychic abilities, is that you can shoot your psychic abilities and also your range weapons at the same time. You don't have to choose one or the other. So this unit, say they take 2 incinerators and they have 3 stormbolters, they're going to shoot with 3 stormbolters, 2 incinerators, and 5 purifying flames. That's a lot of firepower at short range.
And with anti-infantry, 2+.
Yeah, like it's
and ignores cover.
Really good. And that rule that they have, which like one, they're going to take some damage because they're going to play aggressively. They just get more and more powerful.
Yeah.
And they're durable enough to probably take a couple of hits because a 2-up save with 2 wounds is nothing to scoff at.
No, that's hard to crack necessarily.
Yeah, like these guys are going to stick around for a while, and they're going to be a pain for your opponent. And you play very aggressively with them. And just, well, if I played Grey Knights, I would bring 3 of these units. But I also really like the idea of just flamethrower paladins. So
it is objectively cool. Like, let's be honest.
It is the coolest thing.
Yeah, and I think it's to that end that I kind of want to push our tips. Because for here on the show, for those who are watching our faction focus for the first time, we like to, if you are interested in this faction, we like to leave you with some practical tips on how to play this army. If you're going to learn it, you're going to pick it up for the first time, you're going to jump back into the game after an absence, so that, you know, your learning process is eased. And for me, I think my tip is around trying to get the most out of these sort of like high value units. And that is that you have to constantly be thinking about their weapon profiles and your strategy in terms of the teleport. Your army is a teleport army. All of your decisions have to be made considering that as an option. And especially if you've been playing the game for a while with another force that obviously wouldn't have this ability, you're going to have to change your way of thinking a little bit here. You know, when are you going to teleport to try to get aggressive and shoot an enemy unit versus when are you going to try to teleport to block an enemy unit's movement path up a battle lane or something like that, versus when are you going to teleport to get on someone's objective in a back line. You know, you can't do all of these things usually at one time, so when and where you choose to pull the trigger will really determine your victories. And I think that matters a lot.
Yeah, my tip is to not forget about the rapid ingress stratagem.
Oh, yeah.
The rapid ingress stratagem is good for everyone who can deep strike, but for this force specifically, it gives you the flexibility to not just teleport on your turn, but teleport on your opponent's, which allows you to immediately throw a wrench in their plans.
Yes.
Like if you rapid ingress a unit of like paladins into someone's like board side, and they are planning on charging something. Well, now as soon as they try to do that charge, you can fire Overwatch with those paladins that they weren't originally going to plan to have to deal with, but now they might have to.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some fun mobility combos you can use with rapid ingress and firing Overwatch, just in general.
It's incredible, undeniably. And I think the Force is really cool, and so I hope it speaks to you. If it does, and you've got some questions or some follow-up that maybe we didn't cover here on the show, feel free, put it in the comments down below. We are more than happy to answer questions directly. We've already done it for a couple of folks, so please do not hesitate to jump in if you've got something you want to throw out. Also, if maybe Grey Knights isn't for you, the sort of psychic warrior isn't your flavor, look around on the channel. There is going to be a ton of other faction focuses, and hopefully one of them will suit you a little bit better. And for now, it's been all of our opinions. Bonafide, Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all on the next one.